Well, thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'd like to start by paying tribute to the Honourable Member for Wealden for securing this vitally important debate and for her willingness to work across the House on standing up against the genocide that's taking place against the Uyghur in Xinjiang. Last April, this House rightly voted unanimously to declare the persecution of the Uyghur as a genocide. The evidence is compelling, and in spite of the deeply disappointing response of the government to date, I am very proud that this House took the decision that it did. And the principled position that this House has taken was, of course, unequivocally reinforced by the verdict of the Uyghur Tribunal that we are debating today. I also pay tribute to the courage that the Honourable Lady and her colleagues have shown in standing up to the bullying and intimidation of the Chinese government. The fact that she and other honourable members have been sanctioned by Beijing for simply doing their jobs is an affront to our democracy and to this House. And we on these benches stand in solidarity with all members of this House and of the other place who've been sanctioned, along with Geoffrey Nice QC and leading academic Joe Smith-Finlay. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the evidence of genocide in Xinjiang is compelling and conclusive. The crime of genocide requires proof of intent, and it is clear from the evidence presented to the Uyghur Tribunal, and indeed from the legal opinions set out by the New Lines Institute in Washington in March 2021, that the atrocities that are being perpetrated against the Uyghur are not the random acts of some rogue individuals. They are the result of a conscious and carefully orchestrated campaign of oppression and persecution that is being conducted by the Chinese government. The evidence is clear, both through the persecution itself, but also through the results of that persecution. The mass surveillance and arbitrary detention of over 1 million Uyghur and the other minority groups, the torture and inhumane treatment, the rape, abuse and forced sterilisation of women, the enforced separation of children from parents, and the denial of the Uyghurs' right to practice their religion or to speak their language. We all saw the footage on the Andrew Marr show of shaven-headed, bound Uyghur men being led into trains at gunpoint and the squirming live on television of a then Chinese ambassador. We've seen the video bravely recorded by Merdan Gapar from inside the forced labour camps, and we've heard the first-hand accounts from Uyghur women of the forced birth prevention techniques and by the authorities in Xinjiang. But the impact of these horrifying practices is also clear. The Australia Strategic Policy Institute in May 2021 published evidence that birth rates in Xinjiang fell by almost half in the 2 years between 2017 and 2019. And perhaps most tellingly, the Chinese government's own data shows that Xinjiang's birth rates fell by 1/3 in 1718. For these reasons, it is absolutely shameful that the UK government continues to refuse to fulfil its moral and legal obligations to rule on genocide and to support the will of this House. As a signatory to the 1948 Genocide Convention, the United Kingdom is legally bound to take all reasonable steps to both punish and prevent genocide. Yet, as so often with this government, it has failed to match its duty with its actions. It is also deeply concerning that with the international courts effectively paralysed, the government last year refused to support the cross-party attempts to amend the trade bill, which would have allowed UK courts to make a binding preliminary ruling on the genocide. I was consistently clear, whilst speaking from the dispatch box time and again as the then Shadow Minister with responsibility for China, that robust action, and I welcome my honourable friend to her place as my successor. I'm greatly looking forward to continuing to work with her on these important issues. Robust action must be taken in relation to the genocide taking place in Xinjiang, but also in regard to China's oppressive and irresponsible behaviour more widely. I'll come back to that. In terms of responding directly to this genocide, I feel it's important the Minister updates the House today on the following matters. First, I see she's not in her place, so I'll say he for now, but well, I'll stick with she. If she has made any progress on applying Magnitsky sanctions upon a broader number of senior Chinese Communist Party officials and entities responsible for serious human rights violations in Xinjiang, including Chen Quanguo, who has already been sanctioned by the United States. Second, whether the government has managed to build wider support for UN High Commissioner for Human Rights to gain access to Xinjiang, in particular working to engage countries, many of which are friends and partners of the UK, which have shamefully helped to protect China from international scrutiny. And if she believes that access to China is impossible, will she press the High Commissioner to conduct an investigation from outside China? Third, why have we seen so little action in terms of strengthening Section 54 of the Modern Slavery Act? Companies have a responsibility to demonstrate that their supply chains are free of forced labour. So when will we see meaningful sanctions introduced for non-compliance? Mr. Deputy Speaker, successive Conservative governments since 2010 have been naive and complacent in their dealings with China. The so-called Golden Era policy saw Conservative leaders turn a blind eye to human rights and national security issues in a narrow and unbalanced pursuit of commercial interests. Our government appears to be simply observing from the sidelines, as China is not only persecuting the Uyghur, but more widely attempting to undermine the liberal democratic world order and to impose its own authoritarian worldview by riding roughshod over individual liberties, over the security and independence of other countries, and over free and fair trade. We see this agenda being enacted every day in the crushing of democracy in Hong Kong. And I note here that somehow there are still no Magnitsky sanctions on Carrie Lam. Saber rattling in Taiwan, whose airspace is being buzzed on an almost daily basis by Chinese military aircraft. The debt trap diplomacy, which sees poorer countries in effect losing their political autonomy as they struggle to pay back Chinese loans. And the illegal manipulation of markets through measures such as dumping and the theft of intellectual property on an industrial scale. But we also see the weakness over a decade of the UK government in the face of Chinese state-backed companies buying up significant amounts of the UK's critical national infrastructure, including 33% of Hinkley Point, including our water utilities, including Heathrow Airport. And there appears to be no government strategy to support universities in standing up to the pressure that's placed on faculty and individual lecturers to censor their comments about events in Xinjiang. Neither does anything appear to have been done about pressure being applied by pro-Beijing activists on pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong and here in the UK. Worse still, in February 2021, a report by the think tank Civitas accused 14 of the UK's top 24 universities of having ties with Chinese weapons conglomerates and military-linked research centres. And in that same month, it was reported by the Times that almost 200 British academics were being investigated on suspicion of unwittingly helping the Chinese government build weapons of mass destruction. These are serious issues that the government must address as a matter of urgency. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we need a more coherent approach and a clear strategy. The Chinese Communist Party respects strength, consistency and unity, and it is contemptuous of weakness and division. So I hope that the UK government will heed Labour's calls to rebuild alliances with our European allies that this government has broken in the face of shared challenges we face in relation to China, but also to undertake a complete audit of every aspect of the UK-China relationship, from politics to business to the media to academia and our scientific community. A more resilient, strategic Britain, working in partnership with our international partners, would be better placed to send a signal to Beijing that its criminal actions will not be tolerated. Today, the government has an opportunity to draw a line under its shameful golden era policy once and for all. Today, the government has a chance to show that it will no longer turn a blind eye to the horrific crushing of a people, a culture and a language. Let us hope that it will today take this chance.